Hello all, and welcome to the weekly Sig Docs meeting for Kubernetes. Today is Tuesday, September 11th, 2018. I'm Zach Corlison, co-lead of Sig Docs, and here we all are. Why don't we start by asking about new contributors, folks who are here for the first time. I see we have one new contributor, Sylvie TSM. Sylvie, do you want to introduce yourself just briefly? This chat from Sylvie says, can't talk at the moment, just listen. Excellent, well, welcome. All right, let's move on to updates and reminders. So I want to say thank you to Andrew for being the PR wrangler last week. This week, the original PR wrangler I had scheduled Zach Arnold to be PR wrangler. He's still in the middle of 1.12 madness. Brad Topol stepped up and said that he would be happy to take that shift. And now Brad Topol is in the middle of the path of Hurricane Florence. And I suggested to him that he focus instead on not dying. And, so I think that Jennifer, you had discussed sort of being a light adjunct, and I'm willing to be a light adjunct as well.
Yeah, I'm afraid light adjuncthood is all I can commit to because Wednesday and Thursday are the Heptio offsite. But I should also have time on Friday to help catch up if things are starting to look bad then, and over the weekend as well.
Cool. I can similarly promise only to be a light presence, not a full one. But this may just be a light week. If we've had two folks in a row who, for very valid reasons, can't fill the role, this may just be a light week in terms of what we get done.
I mean, I am spending a lot of time in the PR queue anyway. If I see easy stuff, I could probably knock it out.
And for what it's worth, I am under a certain amount of pressure on the Heptio side to really get those Kubernetes docs knocked out. So that really does need to be a priority for me. So that'll help, because that's a bunch of them at this point. There's a lot of Kubernetes related bits and pieces for 112, and I've been seeing stuff in master also.
Okay. Well, we'll take the help where we can get it, and devote what time we can. Hopefully next week back to normal. Let's see. Let's go to our agenda. Let's start out with an update from Zach on 112. How is 112 going? Where are we? How do you feel about 112? How does 112 feel about itself?
Well, I don't know how it feels about itself. Because I don't have that capability of discernment yet, but I feel I invented a new status color in the release burn down meeting. So we are at status chartreuse for docs. It is somewhere in between yellow and green. It's the Sierra mist of statuses. And we are basically in a place where there's 4 people that have just decided that they're kind of done talking to me. So I don't know that those features are going to make it because there's simply no documentation whatsoever. However, 60% of docs are in progress, and I'm expecting a lot of them to hopefully merge this week. 30% are done, so that's good to go, which is nice. And keeping the 112 branch up to date with master as I can. And that's been, actually we haven't really had any merge issues, which has been nice. People who have been wrangling PRs, thank you, because you've pointed out where it needs to be rebased onto release 112 as opposed to master. So that's been nice. GitHub's nice little feature of letting me just simply change the base is also really nice. So that's been cool. Other than that, I was trying to put stuff in the 113 milestone, and I don't know if I have the ability to create milestones inside of the repo. I don't need it, but basically if a 113 milestone could be created, I would love for that to be in existence, so then I can push some of the docs that are saying 113, instead of just clearing the milestone and saying, okay, well, I'm not going to pay attention to this anymore. I could simply set it up. I could also set up like a release 113 branch. It might not be all that useful though, because it's just going to be horribly out of date, but I could set like a base of 113 for these guys.
There should be a
Thoughts?
113 milestone at this point,
Oh,
Zach.
oh.
Is it not showing up?
I did not look between last night and this morning.
You asked the other day. Was that maybe?
Yes, I asked yesterday, and then I fell into a blast to get a hackathon for White Green.
Okay. Because I went in and I thought I notified, and I'm wrangling lots of channels at the moment, so I didn't check back, but I thought it was created.
Let me go to milestones, and yes, it is. Why, thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. I mean, it's not a big deal to do when you have the permissions. I just thought, okay, did something break that I didn't pay attention to, you know? Anyway, yeah.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Thank you, Jennifer. So Misty also had a suggestion, which is rather than granting repo admin permissions to release meisters, that we can just open for things like opening new milestones, that we can also just have release meisters open up a PR requesting that from the I can't remember the team, but the repo team saying, hey, we need to open a new milestone or create a new milestone.
Is there a specific to the, because I've seen, I mean, Kubernetes has, 600 different teams. So I'm not sure which team to request it from. Is there a specific to documentation set of teams that we should be requesting things from?
There are. I'm just looking at the repo settings for collaborators and teams, and I suppose I should be grateful that GitHub is prompting me to enter my password to continue. Kubernetes-website-admins. And I just realized that this team information isn't visible unless you are already a member of that team. So it would be...
we should probably document that somewhere.
Kubernetes-website-admins. And that is specifically for admin functions of the repo. And there's another team that is useful for reviewing Sig Docs PRs, and that is that team right there. So those two teams, yes, let us add those to the available pile of information for the release process.
And as I do a lot of this, I was thinking to myself, like, I would love to be able to automate as much of this as humanly possible. You know, I mean, not that it's, you know, like there's no way that a release meister is ever going to get away from manually reviewing pull requests, which is, I would argue, the most valuable work a release meister does. But a lot of the other sort of like, go here, talk to this person, tell them that, remind them of this, that, and the other, like, all of that is on a time schedule, and a robot can do stuff really, really well and not forget things and drop stuff on the floor. So, like, automated creation of milestone, automated keeping branches up to date, automatic bugging people in Slack and GitHub and all that good stuff. So that's actually something I was thinking about trying to flesh out a bit more. So I'm going to shadow for Docs again next release, and then but basically kind of like not really shadow, but more mentor / do stuff to make that process automatic in the background, if that's of interest. Otherwise, I actually never really even asked. This would be the place to ask. Is that even something that we would be comfortable with as a team?
I am thoroughly in favor of it. The work that you've been doing and documenting in your own repo for automation, for review automation, specifically the piece that you used the GitHub GraphQL to create, I think is awesome as a review tool for releases. So any work that you can do or are interested in doing, I mean, it sounds like, okay, what it sounds like you are doing is saying, I have an idea, I'd like to present a proof of concept to a weekly Sig Docs meeting, which sounds like you're following the right path.
All right.
Cool.
Is this something that we'd want to put also in like a, because I know that I just did it in mine because it was really fast, but is this something we'd want in like an official Kubernetes incubator repo or whatever the process is?
We can probably find a home for it just in K website.
Okay.
They can find, because there's a couple of other tools floating around. Misty had a PR a couple months ago specifically to add some autocomplete commands for an Atom linter, I want to say. And she found a home for those. So if we look at where she stuck those, that might be
Okay.
a good guide.
That could also be something that the Andrew/Luke group of tooling stuff could probably have some oversight with or over.
That's true, Luke. That would be a really good question for where do tools live in K website that don't impact the site service?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, we can talk about that. Maybe if we end up setting up like a weekly meeting or something with the working group, maybe that could be put on the docket.
Awesome.
I'm all for weekly meetings with that group because there's so many tools and ideas I've had.
Before we move on from 1.12 entirely, Zach, are you looking for suggestions or feedback about how to contact and or deal with people who are now refusing to deal with you? Because this has happened before.
Oh, okay. Yes, that would actually be really helpful. I sort of like am trying the iron hammer of like, okay, you're being kicked out, and then no, I'm not. I don't want that. Let's help. No.
Mm-hmm.
For what it's worth, I dealt with this towards the end of 110. I think probably we all have. But what happened in 110 was there were some related issues in some of the SIGs. And Josh Burkus and I wound up attending SIG meetings and basically letting folks know as part of the agenda, you are not going in unless you step up and pay attention to test and docs. Because at that point, Josh was leading test. So if you can find an ally or go it yourself, I mean, I was prepared to do it on my own too. I happened to have Josh there who gave me the idea, right? And then scheduling got complicated. But it was basically showing up and being in their faces because they weren't responding otherwise. So
yeah,
there's precedent there anyway.
Okay, I could probably do that.
And I've been seeing repo traffic from Stephen Augustus coming through and saying, "Hey, guess what? You're kicked out of this milestone now, and you're now in 113 because you didn't respond." So it feels like you have an ally there as well.
Definitely, and Tim and Stephen have both, because I've just presented, been like, hey, here are the facts. Like, I think we've done our homework, and they're like, okay, well, then they didn't make it, and I was like, geez, that seems rough. Like it's going to be so much effort to pull it out of the code base, but okay.
And yet,
it happens every release, though.
Yeah, I'm learning how to be okay being the bad guy, but still, I'll enjoy it.
The good guy, the timeliness guy.
Right.
I think all we're trying to do is say, Zach, we've all been there. It's okay.
Right, and you are doing a good job.
Thank you.
Looking at the progress and looking at the things that you've set up. Yeah. What, Brad?
Be friendly but firm.
Friendly but firm. Excellent. Good work on 1.12. The light at the end of the tunnel draws near. Hang in there. All right. Let's move on. I don't see Vlad here to talk about the focal chatbot, but let's give a brief summary then in lieu of having a larger conversation with Vlad. So the working group that we put together to talk about the chatbot that's been active in Kubernetes Slack since June, we met with Vlad, the Focals designer, yesterday, and he pointed out that this bot is drawing its information from 3 different sources. They're drawing from Kubernetes docs, Stack Overflow, and some AI and natural learning that's drawing answers from conversations in the Slack channels themselves. It looks really cool. I expressed some questions and reservations about, what is your profit model for this bot? Are you taking information that is open as part of this project and making it proprietary as part of your development? That, as far as I can tell, that is not the answer, but I'm also not a lawyer and I don't really have the authority to chase that down. Vlad gave us the option, I guess, to enable a focal bot for Sig Docs, and it seems like an interesting idea. Jennifer, do you want to talk more to the particulars? I know that you were enthusiastic about it yesterday. Do you want to pick it up now and talk about it a little bit?
I can say just a little bit. We didn't get into this yesterday, but I see the value of the bot more in the channels where it's currently working than in Sig Docs itself. People don't tend to come to Sig Docs with technical questions about Kubernetes. They tend to show up to Kubernetes users or Kubernetes novice where the bot's already running. And so what I think would be most interesting for this group is to take a look at the data from those, from the bot working there. There's a kind of rough UI for aggregate reporting, and then Vlad's willing to give us access to the raw data as well. There's not a lot right now. I think there might be some benefit to looking at a very small data set simply because we can get a human sense of what it's like, and then start to think about how we might determine actionable data going forward. If people are saying, well, I looked at that topic and it's confusing, or I couldn't make this thing work, or Vlad showed us there's like, 1 or 2 questions where people have come across commands in the docs that they can't get to work. That seems like golden information for us to figure out where to focus our attention. At a very high level, just knowing where people are tending to look the most. Vlad already has a sense of that. The data seems to be indicating, notice I say only indicating, but seems to be indicating a pattern of what people are looking for. And this seems to me to be potentially helpful, possibly very helpful in guiding us toward prioritizing work. So that's my sense of it.
Yeah. So it's cool. We probably need more information, but it also promises to be a goldmine of information in some limited ways.
Yeah, I've said that after this week, because I'm booked solid, and actually probably after the 1.12 release, I'll take a look at the data myself. And see what I think based on a bit more detail.
So Jennifer, can we defer to you for would 1 week be enough, or do you want
No, give me until the week after the release.
Follow up with Jennifer.
I want to pay some thoughtful attention to it. It's not a lot of information, but it's worth thinking about carefully.
Advice about how/whether to proceed.
So, Jennifer, here's a question. As you're doing this research, I seem to remember Vlad saying something like, well, here's one of the most asked questions. How do you delete a pod? Do you remember that statement he made?
Yes, I do.
So that seems like something that we show 100 times, but it's in the context of some how-to, where the primary purpose of the topic is to do something else, and maybe at the bottom we say how to clean up, or here's how you delete stuff. As you're doing this research, can you take a look at the idea that we might want to have topics that are sort of like cheat sheets that just how to do this, how to do that, isolated, not as part of a larger topic?
Absolutely. That's kind of in the back of my head. I'm wondering whether we're going to get information, trying to sort of hold my mind open about it, but wondering whether we're going to get information about key areas where we might want to think about restructuring the docs too. Or as you suggest, providing some more ways of presenting the same content. God forbid, moving into something like FAQs.
Well,
but maybe here we would really have some frequently asked questions that are worth presenting that way, right? I don't know yet, but yeah, I think thanks for the reminder. And I will try to, come up with both, some stories about the data. I don't think we're ready for anything as full-blown as analysis yet, and some thoughts about what we might do with it.
Yeah, because somebody searches for how do I delete a pod, they might not find it even though we show it 100 times, because the search engine just might not pick that up as the primary thing of interest on a given page.
Yep, and I can think of all sorts of other rabbit holes we might fall down in thinking about how to respond. So I will not go there now, but
right.
we can explore more stuff going for in a few weeks.
Well, thank you for taking a look at that, Jennifer, and we'll revisit in the week after the release.
I'll just say quickly, since I started at Heptio, we're coming up on, so that's more than a year and a half. I've been saying, what's my audience? What's my audience? What do they need? What's my audience? People say cluster admin, people say cluster operator. They offer up all of these elaborate personas, which do not answer the question at all. This is the first time I feel like I've got a chance to understand not just who people are, what their job descriptions are like, but what they're actually trying to do and having trouble with. So I'm pretty excited.
I can help you with that one. I run Y-Green's infrastructure, and it's a nightmare.
Careful what you offer, Zach.
All right. Sample size of 1 for user research. Small n but high value p for qualitative research. Let's move on and talk about Luke for a tools and infrastructure working group update. How's it going? Anything cool to report? Any questions to ask? Where's the test and infra working group?
Yeah, so let me grab the link really quick. I shared a sort of proposal for what the group would be up to last week. I'm going to put that in the chat here. Myself and a couple others have modified it a bit, expanded the scope a tiny bit to include some things I'm pretty excited about. So I'm not sure if this is shareable with all of you, but is Andrew Chen in the meeting? I don't see him.
He's not.
But he reached out to somebody. You'll see the second Google Doc, the presentation. He reached out to somebody I think he knows who did some SEO and site latency analysis and put together a little presentation. So this I think will be so one of the imperatives of the group is to make sure that site latency is kept within reasonably acceptable bounds, and I think that this assessment will sort of will sort of show us a path to how to get there. I think the scores are pretty good overall, but there are some areas that where we're in need of improvement, which actually really shouldn't be too difficult. Just mostly some minor cleanup things. Thus far, we've been doing a pretty good job with that. So, can you all access that presentation? It's just like a Google Docs presentation thingy. That second link.
I cannot.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not quite sure. Yeah, I'll talk to Andrew about that. I'm not sure what the story on permissions is there, but so that's one little development. I think I'm going to let Andrew kind of spearhead that particular effort because he seems to know his way around and seems to have a good handle on the situation. Another initiative underway is Raji pointed something out to me, which I don't believe that she's in the meeting. Pointed out that we haven't really thought much about site accessibility, and so she wants to spearhead an effort to improve our story there. And I think as a first step, she's going to get back to the working group within a couple of days with with kind of an assessment of like what kind of tooling we could potentially have in place put together some kind of plan of action. It turns out that, accessibility is this huge, like vast field that I personally know very, very little about. So I think having somebody spearhead an independent initiative on that could be really beneficial. So
That is awesome.
so in terms of initiatives underway, I think that's all I had to report. On the actual like concrete process side, I got in touch with the appropriate people about getting another Slack channel, and I think that effort's kind of stalled. So I need to send out some friendly pings right now, maybe after this meeting. But yeah, that's where things are at the moment.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm super excited to hear about Raji taking on accessibility improvements in particular. Because we're not really doing anything actively on the site at this point. Even just some best practice, not even just tooling, just some best practices for accessibility, and having moving forward in that area meaningfully, I think will be huge. So thank you, Luke, for chairing that group and moving that work forward. All right. I have no idea how to refer to a group of plural Zacks. So whether we are the Zacks or the Zacki.
Z squared?
We are Legion, for we are many. However,
the Zacki, never mind. Sorry, I was going to go classical on you. You start.
All right, the classical PhD.
No, the Gracchi, right? The founders of Rome, the twins, like
Romulus and Remus, Tweedledum.
Weren't they wolves?
Right.
They were raised by wolves.
I'm feeling very humbled when people are starting to quote classical literature. Very humbled.
Sig Docs is now run by not a wolf.
I think they just turned into wolves on the full moon.
We are no closer to a resolution on this question. Zach Arnold and myself. Talking about the branching strategy working group, we met briefly yesterday with Andrew and Aaron Krickenberger to talk about subtrees, submodules, how to treat internationalization repos as part of our strategy for hosting internationalized content in K-Website. And the more that we talk about it, the more it just looks like we can reasonably make PRs without having to do any fancy Git sorcery. So we're going to meet again at 11:30 a.m. To review that and more or less confirm it. But I'm sort of the mind that if we can do it without having to turn repos into subtrees, there's no clear benefit of doing so. There's still going to have to be manual intervention. It looks like the manual path for just passing commits back and forth between the repo, like manually created commits back and forth between those repos, is more or less equivalent to any advantage gained by trying to follow either a subtree or a submodule path. So we'll talk again, but that's sort of that's the way it's leaning right now, is just make commits back and forth between the repos. But we'll meet again right after this meeting and confirm. Let's see. Is Misty here? I do not see Misty. There's a question that arose in Sig Docs this week about whether or not we have best practices for a particular shortcode for subcade subversion. And I can't possibly do it justice. So I would say, unless somebody really wants to own or drive this discussion, let's defer that until we get Misty and or Tim Fogarty back.
I vote for deferring too, but I just want to say I'm really glad that somebody's taking this up, because it's definitely broken the way it's being used now. I did come across a pull request and have not looked at its current state. that seemed to be designed to address the problem, but it addressed it at the level of fixing the shortcode, not at the level of best practices. And we're up against not just a shortcode use issue, we're up against how features are developed and documented issue also. Right,
Yeah.
so a big can of worms. I think that's just worth calling out because we should give that one a good chunk of time on the agenda when we do have a chance to talk about it.
If you need Misty for anything specific, it probably would be good to reach out to her specifically before the meeting, as she's kind of turning her attention to some other things right now and probably won't be attending de facto. But if you need her for anything, maybe Zach, just email her and let her know. It's like, we want to talk about X topic in X meeting. Can you please come? And she'll be there.
Okay. That's a good reminder, Tom. Thank you. All right. Let me make a quick note of that.
And if it helps Misty at all, I'm willing to second on this. She's paid more attention. She's more aware of the issues right now, but I've got enough of a vague awareness that I can fill in if needed.
All right. We have reached the end of the agenda as we have it. Is there anything that folks want to talk about in the time that we have remaining? All right, last call. That's a SIG meeting. Thanks, everyone. You get 27 minutes of your life back. Take care, Brad. Don't die.
I'm moving furniture in. So I'm a little behind on the PR wrangling because it turned out I did have a list of things to do.
Don't worry about it. Before you arrived, we decided that Jennifer and I will handle it this weekend. If we get to it lightly, we get to it lightly.
Okay, well, and then, if I start going bat stir crazy, I'll do a few too while I got power because, I have nobody here. My family's in Florida. My daughter's at college. But I did run into a few things. It turns out I got to run some supplies to my daughter in Chapel Hill because